Hello there and welcome to the Card Grotto. Today I've got an initial review on the MISTI. This is the most credible stamping tool invented. That's what MISTI stands for. I just call it a MISTI and I'm pretty certain everyone else just calls it a MISTI as well. Otherwise, I'm going to do a review on this. This, like I said, is an initial review. I haven't used it massively. In an ideal world, I've used it for a few months and then go through everything with you. I can't do that, A, because I haven't had it very long and I don't want to do it in 3 months' time, and I know a lot of people have asked me for this review, so I do thank you and I really appreciate that you want my opinion on it. That's really nice actually to hear that people want my opinions. So it is an initial review. I haven't used it to its full capabilities by any means, so I'm just basing it on what I think of it so far, and I've only had it a week. And I haven't actually used it that much really either, so again, it's very initial. So I'm just going to put out a disclaimer: this is completely my opinion. Everyone's going to have different opinions because everyone's going to use it in slightly different ways, and what they use it for, everyone's going to have slightly different capabilities in stamping. I have been stamping for about 10 years. I would say that my stamping ability isn't too bad. I definitely don't think I'm an expert, but I'm not a beginner either. I do have trouble in lining up stamps in terms of restamping. If I've stamped something splotchy and I want to restamp it. In terms of lining things up, like sentiments, if they're straight and things like that, I don't think I'm too bad. You know, it doesn't always work out all the time, but 99% of the time I do tend to get things straight, unless I'm not feeling well, in which case they will be all over the place. But anyway, if I'm feeling well, pretty much they're straight. So this MISTI tool is expensive. I'm sorry, I can't deny that it's expensive. It's $50. Now, you know, cost is very different to different people. I've heard a lot of really lovely things that this tool has helped people that haven't been able to stamp before stamp, people that have given up stamping because they found it too difficult and now they can stamp. Now, that is amazing, and I love this hobby. This definitely, you know, it's a hobby for me, it's not a business, and I just love the fact that people are stamping because I love it. And if you couldn't stamp before and you can now stamp, I just think that's excellent. And if $50 is what that costs, then that's what it costs. Obviously, if you're international, it's going to cost more because shipping is expensive internationally, and it's expensive whether you order from any which shop you order it from. So you can order from My Sweet Petunia directly, who's the person that made the stamp. The MISTI, sorry. You can order it from Simon Says Stamp, and you can order it from My Favourite Things. But either way, international shipping is fairly expensive from all three places. I would say that they're about the same. I haven't ordered from MFT for quite a while, so I'm not 100% sure on their shipping rates again. But, you know, either way, it bumps up the price of the tool, obviously, considerably. But, you know, unfortunately that's what happens to those of us who don't live in the USA, so, you know, that's just one of those things. So there are quite a few different accessories that you can purchase for the MISTI, and they're all helpful in their own different ways. So the tool itself, this is the bulk of the tool. So you have like a door where you would stamp with, and then you have some magnets if you want the magnets. It's not, I personally think they are necessary, but I know people that don't use them and they're fine with it. For me, it is quite necessary. You can have some grid paper. I don't think that's necessary, but it is quite helpful and it's quite handy to have. And then there's a bit of foam as well. So the foam comes with the tool. It's just a piece of like a funky foam or like you know, fun foam or whatever you can, you know, you have, and it fits in here so that if you want to use clear stamps, you use it with the foam in. If you're using cling stamps, because they're a bit thicker, you use it without it. It just depends on, like I said, what you're using. You've got this inches kind of lines here. Again, for most techniques you probably don't need the measurements, but for some of it it's quite helpful to have. I'm definitely a metric girl. I do not understand inches. I am learning because I'm using American size cardstock, so, and I use A2 card bases, so I've kind of got used to inches a little bit, but I don't really understand like the eighths and the 16ths and all that stuff. So if I had the choice, I would have one in centimetres, just because I would find it a little bit easier if I'm using it in terms of the MISTI, but in lining things up. But otherwise it's not, I don't think it's that important. The great thing is that you can use it from any which way you wanted to, so you can use it this way, You could use it this way, or you can use it this way. Now obviously the measurements are upside down and back to front on this side, but you can unpeel them and stick them back down. And my sweet Petunia has a video on her channel showing how you can do that. But otherwise I'm just going to kind of go through. I'm not going to go through the different, I'm going to go slightly through the different techniques that you can use with it, but I'm not going to show you them just because I just don't have the time, unfortunately. This video, I'm guessing it's already going to be really long, so I do apologise for that, but obviously I want to go through it to the best of my ability. So like I said, I personally don't think that you need this grid paper. It's helpful because if you're stamping off of your cardstock, so say you're stamping on this and the stamp is obviously stamping on, you don't want to stamp onto the foam piece. So it's just quite helpful to have because it's the same size as the MISTI. Obviously you could just use scrap paper and that would work just as well. If you wanted the grid lines, then obviously you could buy grid paper or graph paper or anything like that. But it's quite helpful to have because it's the same size. And then also they advise that you use the Novus 1 cleaner. I just didn't understand this in the slightest. I kept hearing things about you can't use any cleaner on here, you can only use this cleaner because the lines of this grid line could potentially wear off, and I always thought, well then just screen plate it on the outside and not on the inside, and it is screen plated on printed on the outside, which obviously makes a lot more sense. So really technically if you were to clean on here it wouldn't come off, but I don't know, maybe it might. That's just my opinion, I'm not sure. I apologise if I'm incorrect there, but you do get a piece of cling vinyl that you can just attach to it. It comes off really easily and comes on and off really easily. You try and get rid of some of the bubbles, but it doesn't really matter too much, to try and protect that screen printing on the outside. So they do advise you that you use this for general cleaning. I got mine from eBay if you happen to be here in the UK. I haven't actually used it yet. I have no idea how good it is. I guess the benefit is just because this is plastic, it might not cloud it or anything like that. Some other cleaners might cloud it. The problem for me personally is that quite often I like to use the Clear Design, sorry, I've got some stamps stuck to this. The Clear Design scrubber pad and the Clear Design cleaner. Now you could in theory add some to a baby wipe and then wipe it, but you're not, like I said, you're not supposed to touch this with any cleaner. So how I found it is that I would, the stamp would be on here. I would clean it with a baby wipe initially. I would then take it off and then I would put it onto an acrylic block and then I would clean it that way. It is just an extra step, but if you want clean stamps like I do, it might just be that you have to do that. And that's just one of those things. You know, I do often do that with the stamp press because I wouldn't you know, obviously use a stamp press on that scrubber pad anyway, so it's just one of those things. Then there's also magnets. I actually don't use the magnets that came with it or that I purchased separately. So I purchased 2 magnets separately when I purchased the MISTI. They are extremely strong magnets. They can actually hurt your skin, so you do have to be careful with that. But otherwise they are 3mm thick. And I found that when you close the door, not that it really matters because it wouldn't damage it, but the door wasn't closed all the way down. Now that bothered me because I'm annoying like that. So I bought some 2mm magnets from Amazon. They came in a pack of 4. I think they're about £5, and actually I prefer them much more, not just because the door closed, but actually because I can pick them up. I couldn't pick up the other ones from there. I had to actually kind of push them across because they were so strong. These are really strong still, and they can definitely hurt your hands, but because they're a little bit thinner, they're not quite as strong as the other ones in terms of the actual, in particular, magnet. And I really like having 4 as well than just the 2, but obviously you could have bought as many magnets as you wanted to. So I'm going to go through the different things that I think is great with the MISTI for the different capabilities. There are hundreds, I'm sure there are absolutely millions of different ways you can use this, but the initial ones that kind of caught my eye into thinking that I wanted to buy it, I'm going to go through those with you now. So first of all, the kind of first one to think about is that you can re-stamp stamps. So like I said, I am rubbish at being able to stamp in the exact same place. I just don't know why, I just haven't been able to do it. So the idea is that you would, say you stamped initially, you pick it up, you would stamp initially, and then if it was splotchy you could just ink it up again and restamp it, and as long as you kept the cardstock in the same place, you'd probably kind of butt it up to the corner as where compared to where I've got it, but if it didn't move it didn't really matter. Then it would stamp in exactly the same spot, and you could stamp it as many times as you wanted, 10 times, however many times you wanted. That is really good if you didn't stamp it correctly in terms of it was a bit splotchy. That could be the ink, that could be the stamp, just how you did it, however. But also if you wanted a darker colour, you could do that, and you know, like if you do first generation stamping, it's obviously going to be lighter than like 5th generation stamping, for example, so you could get more out of your inks because you know you did it that way. Also another good thing to be able to do is to line up like the kind of 3-step stamping. So this is the Alter New Vintage Roses. This is the first time I've used the stamp. It's not perfect, you know, but it's how I used it at the time, and it pretty much was the first time I used the MISTI as well with these. So the idea of these kind of stamps is that you would you take the first one and then you stamp and then you stamp, so you've got 3 different ones, and you would use generally 3 different inks. So you'd use a lighter one, a mid-tone, and then a darker one. Now the idea is that you would initially stamp the first one, and then with the second one you would then line that up over the top. Now I have lost this stamp because I've got so much stuff on my desk. I've just found it. So you would stamp that one first, and then you would place this over the top and you would line it up. And you are still using your eyes for this. This is definitely not a foolproof way of doing it, and this is not a foolproof tool. I have heard people mention that they think that they might lose their stamping skill if they use this too much. I'm not sure of that, because having used it, I know that it's still down to user error as such, I suppose. So you would have to kind of lean over, look and see where you think that this would line up properly, and then you would stamp it. Now the benefit of this is that where you think it should be stamped, it will stamp, whereas if you were to do it with an acrylic block, where you think it might stamp, it might not end up stamping. But obviously where you think it might stamp, it might not be in the right place. You can just misjudge it by a little bit, and that's just how good your eyes are, or I don't know how it really works, but you know, it's definitely not a foolproof way of doing it. You could do it in that if you were to use a bit of plastic, I've just got some templates in here. If you were to stamp it on a bit of plastic, and then you would so like where you'd put it, you'd pick it up and then you would put the bit of plastic over the cardstock, and then you would stamp onto the plastic, and you can see if it's lined up correctly, like you would if you were using a traditional stamp positioner, sorry. That's just the same kind of thing. So you could do it that way, but like I said, it is not a foolproof way of doing it if you're just looking at and eyeballing it kind of thing, but it is slightly easier and it is a bit quicker also to do it that way. Also a really good thing is to line up kind of like border stamps. These are the ones from Clearly Besotted, and these are the background builder ones. And what's good is that you can keep your stamp in the exact same place. So say for example you were to stamp it like this, and then you would pick it up, and then when you did your next one you would just move it, so you could work out how deep the stamp is, and then you would move it by that much. So say it was an inch, for example, which would be really helpful. You could just move the cardstock up to the 5th inch when it was already on the 4th, and you would stamp again, and it would be directly below it, and you would keep going, and you just move the cardstock, which does make it a little bit easier, and it's a bit easier to line up the stamps. I had a quick go. This wasn't done by the measurements, this was done by eye. So the first one I did kind of, the gap was a little bit too big, but as I got going it became a lot easier, and that was quite good. And I also did it with the music note stamp, which is this one here. Again, I did it by eye. I didn't measure it in the slightest because I was just playing around, just seeing how it would work. So to start with, it worked out quite well, and then I did get a bit of an extra gap here. And again, if you did it by measurements, that wouldn't happen. Also, you could do it with a bit of plastic, and again, that would line up correctly. Another great way you can use the MISTI is to kind of make patterns. So I haven't got anything to show you, but I'm going to link to a video by Karen Davis. She did a beautiful card, and she used this stamp here by Clearly Besotted, and she kind of used these kind of images to make a pattern, and it would be really, really difficult without the MISTI. You could technically do it with a stamp positioner, probably would take a lot longer though, and yeah, so I'm going to link that down below, but that's a really good another way that you can use the MISTI. And then also you can actually stamp on circles. So say that you wanted a sentiment, for example, and you wanted it to say like happy birthday, happy birthday, happy birthday, happy birthday kind of thing. You can actually, well, I haven't tried it, so I'm going to say it's really easy because it looked really easy. But I'm going to link to a video by Maureen Wong, and she showed how to do this with a different kind of template that you can make. And it just looked really, really easy. I'm going to try it out soon, but I didn't manage to get it done for this video. But that's another thing that you could use the MISTI for. Another way you could use the MISTI is to use it with stamping and die cutting. I know a lot of people have trouble using these kind of solid dies. I do have a video that I made probably about 2 years ago now, 2 or 3 years ago, of how you can actually stamp and then die cut even using these solid dies. And this is the same kind of method, although it's opposite. So it's die cutting and then stamping, but it is a little bit more a foolproof way of doing it as opposed to just kind of eyeballing it. So I'm just going to go through that with you really, really quickly. Maureen Wong does have a video on her channel using it, and she uses an eclipse mat. So like one of the mats that you use with an electronic die cutter. That's kind of sticky but not really, really sticky, but I have managed to find a way of not using that, which still works out fine in my personal opinion. So I've just got a bit of scrap paper. You could just use any paper here at all. I'm just going to hold it down with the magnets. Just make sure that that is right in the corner here. And then I'm going to use this stamp set. This is the Elegant Butterflies from Clearly Besotted, and I'm going to use this this stamp here. So I'm just going to, it doesn't really matter where you do it. You are going to waste a bit of scrap paper, but I do have quite a lot of scrap paper lying around. So I'm going to pick up the stamp. Because this paper is so thin, it is going to lift up, but again I'm just going to make sure that wherever it places it is going to be in the right place. So then I'm going to ink it up with some ink. It doesn't really matter what I use. And then I'm going to stamp it down on here. So where this is, I'm then going to take the die. So this is the die that the die cut. So I'm going to use both the positive and the negative piece. And with the negative piece, I'm going to place it on like a template. So this is how I do it when I am die cutting ordinarily, when I've already stamped and then die cut. I'm going to use a little bit of tape. This, because I'm using tape, you don't actually need to. You can use that eclipse mat and you can stick it down, but just because like if you wanted to save a bit of money and you didn't want to buy the mat, you could do it this way. So I've just lined that up on there, and then I'm going to take the positive die and then die cut, and then I'm just going to place it into there, and it's just going to stay in there because of where the card has been cut. And then again I'm going to ink up this stamp. And then I'm going to stamp on it, and then in this case it's lifted up, but it doesn't really matter. But then it's in, I mean this hasn't stamped perfectly, so I could do it again and it would just be in the same place as long as you've made sure that this is all in the same place. But it's stamped out perfectly, and it's completely lined up, and all the white is kind of the same around each place, and that for me, you know, I'm OCD about that kind of thing. So that's some of the capabilities that can be used with the MISTI. Like I said, you can use so many different ways of using it, and I'm definitely just kind of looking into it, how, you know, how you can use it really. But so far so good. I am enjoying using it. I do think it's a really good tool. Again, everyone has lots of different capabilities. I've been stamping, you know, like I said, quite a long time. But there are definitely things that are going to be more helpful with the MISTI than they were without it. Like I said, it's an expensive tool, but those things alone for me worked out that this is going to be helpful. Yes, you could use a stamp positioner, and you wouldn't really need this. Most of the techniques I've shown you, you could use with a stamp positioner only, but it is easier with the MISTI, so it just depends on how you feel and whether you think it would be worth it or not. So far I really like it, but like I said, I need to kind of use it for quite a while to see whether, you know, I definitely would use it on every card. At the moment I'm thinking that I probably won't. I'm not going to get rid of my acrylic blocks or my stamp presses or anything like that, because sometimes it might just be quicker just to get an acrylic block and stamp something, like especially if you don't need it in a particular place or whatever. It might just be a little bit quicker, I don't know. Time will tell on how much you know, I use it. I do think I will probably use it quite a bit. That's obviously what I'm aiming for, because it was quite expensive. So I hope that's helped some of you deciding on thinking whether you might like it or not. Again, it's just personal preference, it's personal thing. If you can line up your stamps and restamp them really, really well, it might not be for you, but you know, everyone's capabilities are slightly different, and it's, like I said, it's really great that there is a tool that is available for people that, you know, struggle with stamping. So like I said, I hope that's helped some of you. Any other questions you've got, please just leave them in the comments section on YouTube or also on my blog. I will try and answer them as best as I can. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you soon.